This is a recording of the financial exercise, which is the first exercise under financials. We have mentioned before that financials is actually integrated into majority of the modules within SAP because every single module deals with money somehow, either at the beginning or at the end. So you are either buying or selling or incurring cost and assigning that cost to a particular unit or what we call cost center within the organization. So we'll start with the first exercise, and in this exercise you will have to do some setup before you can actually post transactions to the general ledger. So the first exercise asks you to create a new bank account in the general ledger. So we'll go under Accounting, Financial Accounting, General Ledger, Master Records, General Ledger Accounts, and Individual Processing, and Central. Now, you have to understand that General Ledger has certain accounts in there where each of these accounts is used in order to record a specific transaction. So the fact that we are under General Ledger, to create a bank account, we'll have to go to Master Records. You understand, of course, that the bank account is part of the master data, which means it continues to exist within the system from one cycle to the next. You do not erase that information, you reuse it. Same like the vendor or the customer or material. So bank account is part of the master data, and you would create the bank account under the general ledger. So we'll click on centrally, and now you your general ledger account would be 1, 0, and then 3 numbers. Mine are 0, 0, 0, and 5. Now the 0, 0, 0 will be replaced with your GBI number, the last 3 digits of your GBI number. Your company code, since we are operating in the US, we'll use the US. Remember that there are 2 subsidiaries under GBI. We have the US 00 and we also have the one in Germany. We will copy data that already exists in another bank into this bank. So instead of refilling data for that particular new bank account, you will copy the information from an already existing bank account. So they ask you to go under General Ledger Account and to choose Create with Reference, and the General Ledger account that you are copying from is 1 and 5 zeros, and it is under the company code US 00, so it is also in the US. You're asked to make sure that the account group is liquid assets, since a bank account will hold cash. Cash is considered to be a current asset, or what we call a liquid asset. That means it can easily you use to buy material. It's not the same like land or machinery that are considered to be fixed assets. Why are they called fixed assets? Because it takes time for you to convert them into actual cash. The liquid asset or the bank account is considered to be a balance sheet account. Remember, P&L stands for profit and loss. That's the same like your income statements. So that only include expenses and revenue accounts. The short text should be bank and the name, your number. So mine is 000, and the long text should be bank account 000. And now we need to save it. So the data has been saved. Now we'll also create a reconciliation account in general ledger, and remember we said the reconciliation accounts are accounts that are used in order to aggregate information from the subledger to the general ledger. So for example, we said that in the general ledger all accounts payable are grouped into just an accounts payable account, whereas the subledger will have individual vendor accounts. Accounts payable is an account that's used to show the amount that you owe your suppliers. So of course you deal with multiple suppliers, with several suppliers. Every supplier has their own or has its own account in subledger. All of the supplier accounts get aggregated in accounts payable. That aggregation happens, or the transfer from subledger to general ledger is done through the reconciliation account. So we'll go back, and this time we are going to create a reconciliation account. It is the same path. So if you are, I assume you are still in one setting, going back and doing the second exercise. So you should see accounting, financial accounting, general ledger, master records, general ledger accounts, individual processing, and centrally. That's exactly the same path that we took before. So this time you are creating a general ledger account that starts with 1-1, and then so instead of the 1-0 it will be 1-1, and my number is 000, and the last digit is 5. Yours should be, instead of the 000, should be your last 3 digits of the GBI. And this time we are copying data from bank account 300,000. So we'll go under general ledger account again, and we'll create with reference from general ledger account 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in company code US 00. So it automatically tells you this is a reconciliation account. And again, a reconciliation account is a balance sheet account. It does not deal with the expenses or revenue. Now you will enter payables miscellaneous as the short text. And instead of payables trade accounts, remember to put your number. So here, payable miscellaneous, and my number. Yours, as I said, is the last 3 digits of your GBI user ID. And that's all, and we'll save. We'll create an expense account this time, which would be profit and loss. So again, go back and click on centrally. The account starts with a 75, your number, and ends with 5. Yet again, it is US 00, and you will click on General Ledger, create with reference. The General Ledger account that you will copy from is 740-300, and it is US 00, and hit enter, and it will say that it is a rent expense, so it's a profit and loss account. And you will put rent expense and your number, and again the long text is rent expense and your number, and save. We will create a cost element. Now the cost element is a particular cost that is incurred by the organization. So a cost element can be salaries, can be rent. That would be an expense that you would incur. So because cost element, we said it is an expense, but usually that expense is allocated to a particular department. So we are going to create it under not the financial accounting, but under controlling. So for the previous 3 accounts, the bank account, the accounts payable, and the rent expense, we created them under financial accounting. Now under the managerial accounting, which is controlling, we'll create a cost element. As we said, a cost element is something that we incur, an expense that we incur. So it could be salaries, it could be rent, but the most important thing is the fact that it is allocated to a cost center, to a particular cost center, to a particular unit within the organization. That doesn't mean that this unit is paying for the expense. The expense get allocated for it because that unit is using that resource. So it doesn't have to be the unit that's actually paying for the expense. It is just a way for management to see how much resources are being used by a particular unit and how much output is generated by that unit. So to control that, they use what we call cost elements. So this time, as we said, we will not go under financial accounting, but we'll go under controlling, because that's the module that's used for managerial accounting. Those of you who have some kind of an accounting background would understand what I'm saying. So we'll go under controlling and cost element accounting and master data again and cost element. We're creating a cost element, individual processing, and create primary. Now you will, we talked under controlling that there is a primary element and there is a secondary element. So a primary element has a one-on-one, has a one-to-one relationship with the general ledger account, whereas the secondary element may not have, does not have a corresponding account in the general ledger. So you're asked to enter the controlling unit of NA00. You can search and see what is there. So NA stands for North America. And the cost element that you are creating is 7, 5, and 3 zeros and 5. And it is valid from the first month, first of the current month. So that should be beginning of March. Up until infinitely, so that's why you have it 12,31,999, and the cost element that you are copying from is 740,300, and the controlling area is again North America 00, and we'll click OK. And now you see that the rent expense is being copied. As we said, this is a primary cost element, which means it has a corresponding account in general ledger. We've already created the rent expense, so now we have a cost element that we will use in order to allocate that rent to the different units. Remember, when you pay rent to a landlord, you pay for the whole organization. So let's say you're renting a whole building that is 5 stories. Each story has 3 apartments or 3 units. Then that will make up 15 units in your whole organization. Yes, finance or the financial department will just cut one check to the landlord for the whole sum of the rent. Let's say it is 15,000. Then the 15,000 is then allocated to the different departments based on the square footage that they occupy, or it could be based on the number of employees that are hired. But anyway, the cost element is used in order to allocate the expense incurred among the different units within the organization. So you'll just add your number and save. This time you'll create a vendor master record for the landlord, the person who actually rent to you. So that's part of accounts payable. We'll have to go back to financials, and a vendor would have an accounts payable account. So you will close the general ledger and we'll say accounts payable, and we want master records and create. And they want you to leave the vendor blank. Put the company code US00 and the account group is, and you have actually a search, so be interesting to look and see what's KRED, and you look at KRED and it's a vendor. So that code KRED stands for vendor. So you're saying that vendor, that the account that I'm creating is of type KRED, which means that this person is a vendor. And we will put the vendor number as 105, and then your GBI number. My GBI number is 000. Yours should be, as we said, 135 or whatever your number is. And the company code, of course, is US00. And we click on enter. So you're asked to enter to click on the address view, which is the current address, the current view. It says here address, and we want to enter cardinal properties as the name. And make sure that you put your GBI number. Your search term is your GBI, the last 3 digits. Postal code is 55347. And it is in Eden Prairie or Eden Prairie. And the country is US. And the region is MN, Minnesota. And English is selected as the language. And now we will click on enter. And there's nothing to enter until payment transactions accounting view. So we need to wait until we have accounting. And here is the accounting information. And we need to enter the reconciliation account, as instead of that 300,000, we need to change it to 11 and your GBI last 3-digit number minus 3 zeros and 5, and you are to click enter, and payment terms should be 0001, and you want 2 invoices to be sent to you, so make sure that you check double invoice is checked. Everything looks fine, so we're going to save and we'll go back to the opening screen. Now we want to create an invoice receipt for rent expense. So we've received an invoice from our vendor to pay the rent. So we'll go and you can do that right away because you're not buying anything. Remember, in purchasing we have to start with a requisition and a purchase order, then wait for the vendor to actually send you an invoice for you to be able to enter the invoice receipt. But here we just have rent and we are paying it every month. So the process every month starts with an invoice being sent from the vendor. So we will be under financial accounting, of course, since we are dealing with money. We'll go under financial accounting and accounts payable, and we want to enter a particular document. So we'll go under document entry and we want to enter an invoice. And your vendor, now you can't remember what was the number for the vendor. Your search term was, and these are the last 3 digits of your GBI. And now I have them all, and I need to find the vendor that I just created. And I know it is Eden Prairie, and that's so it tells me that the vendor number is 125026, and you want to enter today's date as the invoice date. I should be able also to see US 00 Global Bike as your company code. And the amount is 1,500. So you're entering an invoice for $1,500. And the account that you will use for that, since it is a revenue, the general ledger account is 75, your number. So remember, my number is the 3 zeros. Yours, as we said, is the last 3 digits of your GBI. So we know that 75's 3 zeros and or the GBI number and then 5 is your rent expense. We need to enter under text, we need to enter invoice cardinal rent expense. And we need to put the cost center as NA, North America HR2. The last thing is the cost center. You need to scroll to the right to be able to see it. I'm going to choose the NAHR 2000. Yours should be 2 and then the last 3 digits of your GBI. We'll hit OK. So everything is fine. We're going to save the invoice. And it says write down the number for the invoice 19 in here. I think it might be 7 zeros and was 4. Yours, of course, your number would be different. And now we want to look at the general ledger account balances and see that the actual invoice we have entered have been posted to general ledger. So we'll go up. And we will go under general ledger. Remember we said that the reconciliation account will take from the individual accounts for the different vendors and post it to the accounts payable under general ledger. And you want to display the accounts from 750005 to 759995. So I have one that is debited for 7,500. So the current balance is 7,500. They tell you to adjust the view. Okay, if we double click on that line, you see there is the posting that I've just made for the $1,500, but there are also other invoices that you see. And in the exercise, it tells you, try and explain why we see multiple invoices. Well, I'm hoping that the answer is as obvious, and that is each one of you guys in the class have posted their invoice. So I see that mine is posted because the general ledger account is 75 and the 3 zeros and 5. So rent expense 000, and then account 136 has posted, account 139 has posted, 145, 148, and that's it. So these are the different people within the class that have posted rent expense. Okay, now we want to change the view a little bit, so we are going to click on the change layout, and they ask you to choose from amount in local currency to local currency 2, amount in local currency 3, local currency 3, tax code, clearing document, profit center, and segment. And you want to transfer them so they won't be seen. Then click OK, and now you see that it has become more concise, and you can see here is my transaction that I just posted. So we looked at the invoice. Let's look at the accounts payable and the, display balances again. So once we're looking at under general ledger, another time under accounts payable. Remember, accounts payable have the individual vendor accounts. And 125026 is the last vendor that we have created. Make sure that the company code is US00 and 2014 is the year, and then activate. And you can see, because we haven't paid yet, there is a credit for that vendor for 1500. We're crediting or increasing accounts payable for that particular vendor by $1,500. So we owe that vendor $1,500. We need now to pay that vendor. So we want to post payment. We're paying that vendor today. We are using a particular bank to pay from. So it should be 10 and then your GBI number and 5. And we are going to pay $1,500. And just like as a note, we will put invoice HR. We need to enter the account number for that vendor. So I'll put my search term. I should see all of my vendors. And I'm going to select cardinal properties. So his number or the vendor number, the land reward is 125026. That's mine, of course. And now we want to say process open items. So that's the 1500 that we owe the landlord. So there isn't any money that's not assigned. So document has been posted, so I've already paid the vendor. I should, now if I try and display the balance, I should see a zero balance. So the debit and credit should be exactly equal. So I want to see the bank account and see the balance for the bank account. And it says that there is a credit of 1500. So an actual payment of 1500 has already been done. If we try now to go under accounts payable rather than general ledger and display the balances, for that particular vendor, you see now there is a debit of 1500 because of the payment and a credit of 1500. So the first the credit happens first because of the invoice. When I receive the invoice and I post it, a recording of the credit of 1500 for that vendor, it shows on accounts payable. When I post payment out of my bank account, then I have a 1500 debit for the vendor. So if you look at the line item, you see that the balance is actually zero. So there is no balance for that customer. The last statement is, or the last step is to look at the financial statement and see the effect of the credit of 1500 for the rent expense and debit because of payment. So we'll go and click on General Ledger. And this time we'll go under Information Systems because we want to generate a report. So every time you want to generate a report, it's under Information System. So the chart of accounts is GL 00, and the company code is US. Remember this, the version for the financial statements is G and then your number. And you need to use ALB tree control with layout 1 SAP and execute. And you get a number of warnings. And you can see the financial statement for GBI 000. Now the numbers will not match what's on the handout because we have done several transactions in there. But you can see that because we have just created the bank account 1 or 100005, yours of course should be 101355. You should see the 1500 in there. We can go also under profit and loss and see that there is an expense of 1500. So under rent expense, you see that there is a 1500 in there. So that's all for the first exercise. And we'll have another recording for the control.